Here tonight on a special Dateline NBC, Chris Hansen interviews a very important man in civil rights history, and he is here with us to talk about his childhood, the rise of the Black Panther Party, the practices he was involved in while a party member, and the fall of the Panthers due to extra-legal activities of the federal government. The former Black Panther Party leader and co-founder, Bobby Seale. And now our very own Chris Hansen.
You have a seat.
I'm excited to be here today, Chris. It's an honor to be on your show.
Well, pleasure's all mine, Mr. Seale. Now let's get down to it. Your childhood, Bobby. How was life growing up in Texas?
Well, Chris, I don't like to talk about it. Well, my father was very abusive to both me and my siblings, John and Betty. Unfortunately, sometimes he would turn on my mother, too. Didn't have much growing up, Mr. Hansen.
That sounds like an unfortunate life you had. Your father, George, was a carpenter, correct?
Yes, that's right, Chris. However, while he was very good at his job, it was hard for him to find work sometimes because of the color of his skin. While you may not hear about things that happened in Texas, the state where I grew up, there was still an outpouring of hatred. Just because we were black. The fact that the Jim Crow laws had still not been abolished either did not help things. Plessy versus Ferguson, too. It was not equal.
You were growing up in Texas in the late 50s, early 50s? Those southern states then. I'm very sorry to hear that, Bobby. Now, well, we all want to hear about it. The Black Panther Party. What were its origins?
Well, during World War II, my family and I moved to Oakland, California, where I met Huey Newton while attending Merritt College.
Well, why don't you tell our audience who Huey Newton is?
Huey Newton is the other founder of the Black Panther Party and a very good friend of mine. We both shared the same political views, black nationalism and all, so we joined the school's Afro-American Association. However, we both became increasingly suspicious of the association's direction.
You didn't like where it was headed?
No. They just wanted to sit there and think and talk about the problems that our people were facing, such as unequal opportunity, discrimination, and police brutality, rather than act. Acting on problems is the principle we founded the Black Panther Party for self-defense on in 1966.
Sounds like Malcolm X was a great influence.
Oh, yes.
Speaking of principles, though, can you talk about the Black Panther Party's 10-point platform program?
I'd be glad to, Chris. The 10 points of the Black Panther Party was our declaration, I suppose you could say, of our mission. To break the chains of oppression set on Africans during this time, and we are ready to do this by any means necessary. None of that non-violent stuff that people like Martin Luther King Jr. preached. Like you said, Malcolm X, he was a visionary. His people actually acted, and that's how you get things done. Defending yourselves against the oppressors showed that we weren't going to stand for the terrible treatment we were being put through.
So you weren't a fan of Martin Luther King's philosophy?
No. While he was a very good civil rights leader, I don't really support his views.
You're more on the defensive side.
Yes.
Okay. Defending yourself, Bob. What were some practices of the Black Panther Party to do this?
Well, one of the very first things that Huey and I decided that we would do was the armed patrol. In the back alley ghettos that Africans were confined to, the police's handguns were often both the judge and the jury. So whenever we saw another black man getting searched or beaten by the police, we would show up with firearms to make sure the cops didn't violate their constitutional rights.
Did they react?
They did, although it worked pretty well, as I recall. Although the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was supposed to give blacks equal rights like the opportunity to vote, and also ban discrimination everywhere, most police still didn't seem to understand that.
They were still corrupt.
Yeah. Now that I look back on our use of guns, though, I somewhat regret resorting to violence. Many Panthers got killed in firefights with the police, including my good friend Bobby Hutton, who was unarmed in battle.
So a lot of that resulted in firearms? And you'd show up with guns?
Yeah.
That's terrible. Why did you guys use guns?
On the one hand, the guns were there to help capture the imagination of the people. But more important, since we knew that you couldn't observe the police without their guns, we took guns with us to let the police know that we have an equalizer.
Alright, that's understandable. Now, I know that violence isn't the only thing the party was famous for. You have a lot of good things about the free breakfast program you ran for children back in the 60s.
That was great. I really liked doing that for the kids. We started serving breakfast for all the homeless kids in Oakland, and that spread to all of our branches throughout the U.S. We helped thousands who couldn't get food any other way. That is one of the brighter aspects of the party.
And you yourself grew up in poverty, didn't you?
Yep. That was one of the driving forces behind starting that.
Good philosophy. In the fall of the Black Panther Party, what happened there?
The FBI, that's what happened. They used a system called Counterintelligence Program, or COINTELPRO for short. Basically, the authorities acted outside of the law with the authorization of J. Edgar Hoover, the FBI director at the time.
He let them?
Yeah. That would be illegal during this time, but
sounds very corrupt.
The government was ready to do whatever it took to stop us. They sent in undercover agents, raided our buildings, and used brutality and intimidation to repress us. Huey and I being jailed at the time, the early 70s, didn't help much either. The party died a slow and natural death, I guess you could say.
So it declined as time went?
Yeah.
Alright. Why do you think the federal government was so intent on stopping it?
They came down on us because we had a grassroots, real people's revolution, complete with the programs, complete with the unity, complete with the working coalitions, where we cross racial lines.
Alright, Bobby. That's a great account of one of the most revolutionary organizations in the civil rights movement, the Black Panther Party. Now, would you mind telling us about your life now?
Life is really great, Chris. After I was released from prison in 1973...
Why exactly did you go to prison?
Well, I had conspired with other party members to incite riots, and I regret doing that. So after I was released, I rethought the violent ways I had taught while a Panther, and decided that they were not for me. I started reforming myself by running for mayor of Oakland. Although I finished second, it was still a great experience for me. Thinking about traveling around the country to speak, too. I think that would be good for me.
So you do regret some of the things you did when you were younger?
Yes, very much so.
Well, Bobby, that about wraps up today's interview. Thanks for all the great info you've given us.
It was my pleasure, Mr. Hansen.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Bobby Seale.
This interview was filmed in the year 1980. Today, Bobby Seale lives a quiet life of writing and speaking. He has realized his dream of public speaking by doing so at colleges. He has published several books including Seize the Time, A Lonely Rage, and Barbecuing with Bobby, and is also currently producing a feature-length movie of Seize the Time. Bobby describes himself as the old cripple-footed revolutionary humanist. This concludes today's presentation of Dateline NBC.